Hey, Shawna, have you ever heard of the Menopocalypse?
That sounds ominous, but we do have the expert in it.
Yes, let's dive in and talk to Miss Amanda Thebe. Welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, where we dive deep into pressing health and fitness issues facing aging women. I'm Alli Kerr.
And I'm Shawna Kaminski. And together we'll bring candid conversations, expert advice, and personal stories that will inspire and empower you on your own wellness journey. Amanda, it's been a long time coming. I'm so happy to have you on our podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, ladies, and congratulations on your launch.
It's been a fun ride, and let's just dive right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And to me, when I think of Amanda Thebe, I think menopause. Why is that? Tell us about you.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, that's not where I thought I would end up, but here we are. I am very similar to you, ladies, in that the fitness industry is something that's always been part of my life. It was almost a passion I had rather than an actual job. When I was 18, I became an aerobics teacher and a personal trainer, and I've been and done all the trends. So I think I'm in like year 35 now, which is a pretty long time. And as you go through the industry and education improves, you sort of really have a great understanding of human physiology, right? I mean, that's something that we pride ourselves on. Even if things change, as the science progresses, I felt like I was somebody who really understood the human body quite well. And then I hit perimenopause and I was like, what is happening to me? And so I would say I was about 42 and I'd just been to a boxing class and worked really hard. And Shawna, I watch your workouts. When you work out really hard and then afterwards you just spent absolutely knackered. I couldn't function. And ended up going to bed and I started to feel really unwell after this one particular class. The room started spinning and I started like vomiting and I couldn't walk without falling over. I just felt terrible. And I assumed it was maybe a virus and it would get better. And so it did. Then it came back and it kept happening again and then getting worse. And it sort of made my vision go. I would lose feeling in one side of my body. And so essentially, something was happening and I didn't know what it was. And so essentially, that was it. 2 years in the Canadian healthcare system, which really wanted to look after me. I'll give them their kudos. They heard me, they helped me, but not one single person in those 2 years and undergoing all of those tests said to me, I think what you're experiencing is perimenopause, and these are typical symptoms, and I can help you. Instead, I was left with way more answers than questions. In between that, I started struggling with things like incontinence and depression, like severe depression. And my life was miserable. My quality of life really took a nosedive. And then 2 years later, I went to a gynecologist just for one of those routine yearly appointments that we never go to. I eventually went to one and he just identified straight away that I was struggling with perimenopause, told me he could help me. And I just felt this huge sense of relief. I mean, we're talking now 10 years ago, and I was like, what's perimenopause? And I swore actually, and I vowed not to swear on your podcast today. I swore and went, what the F is perimenopause? I'd never heard of it. And then I said, I felt a relief because I didn't have a brain tumor. Like that's where my brain had gone. And then I was just really pissed. Then I was like, look, I'm somebody who was supposed to be sort of a fairly knowledgeable person on human physiology. I'm going through this and I didn't understand it. How on earth are other women supposed to understand? And then it sort of snowballed from there with like a Facebook group and my book and my podcast. And I just started being a patient advocate that was actually hunting down experts and saying, why does this happen? What is this happening for? Why don't we know about it? And that's it, really. And so it happened a little bit by accident, but part of me really believes that it was sort of kismet, that there was a movement happening, and maybe I was just meant to be part of it. And I'm glad I am, because I see that it's making a difference. Like, you guys are talking about it. You see clients every day, women struggling. And maybe 10 years ago you wouldn't have said, "Oh, I think that's maybe menopause and I can give you some resources." We wouldn't have put two and two together, right?
Yeah. And I think that you're a little bit younger than me, but we sort of missed everybody just started to hush hush about menopause after the WHI study, and doctors stopped talking about it. Menopause hormone therapies, hard stop. And it was kind of like a 4-letter word. And I know that I knew very little of it until I started researching a little bit about the plights of my mom, and then becoming part of that age demographic and really looking into it as well. So it's a very hot topic and much needed, considering how much of our life we spend in it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that if I do lots of educational talks now for the workplace, because I'm gobby. I don't mind talking about it, and it can be refreshing to have somebody deliver workplace talks that aren't dry and miserable, right? So I sort of add a little bit of personality to the conversation, because the conversation can be pretty exhausting, right? But I think that, one of the statements I always say when I do these talks is a woman spends most of her adult life in menopause. And people are like, no, they don't. Menopause is just like a day, or, you just have a few hot flashes and you don't get your period. But if we know that perimenopause can happen in our late 30s, early 40s, that was me, it might have been others. And regardless of whether you have symptoms or not, that's when our reproductive hormones start to change. And we're then in our menopause phase, including post-menopause, until the day we die. That's potentially 40, 50 years in some type of menopause state. And I think it's really important to know that, because it's changing state of our reproductive health that shows differently for every woman, and there's different answers and solutions for every woman, and there's different health risks that we need to take into account. And us as trainers and nutritionists, if we have that too, are perfect for this conversation, because how we live our lives as we get older really matters. It has to be with quality, not just like living a long time. We want to like live well and strong, and it's a pervasive message that we all have, right? And so yeah, perimenopause 8 to 10 years potentially, and it's the most symptomatic. Menopause is that line in the sand that you retrospectively look back and go, oh hey, I'm in menopause, no periods. And then we have like a big afternoon tea and there's fireworks and it's all exciting. And then afterwards, we're in post-menopause, when our hormones are at their lowest level. And then we then need to pay attention to the health issues that may sort of like creep up on us if we don't take note.
So, Amanda, tell us about, if I'm a trainer that's in my 20s and I'm training ladies, because a lot of clients are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. What are some things that a trainer should be just aware of, sensitive to, that a client may be going through during their workouts, or that may be affecting their workouts? What are some things that we need to be aware of?
So it's really interesting, because if I go back to when I was training in person, I think when I was about like 38, 39, 40, women, I used to do those small fitness classes, like 8 to 10 women, usually mainly women, and some of them were menopausal, and they would come in and go, oh, menopause is kicking my ass today. Or they would say things like, we're not jumping, are we? Because I literally keep peeing my pants every time I breathe. And I'd just be like, oh, that sucks. I had no idea what they were talking about. And so it became very clear to me when I started experiencing this myself, there is a huge knowledge gap. And so first thing trainers can do, even just moving away from the one-on-one coaching, fill your knowledge bucket, like actually understand what's happening. Because you can't have a conversation with somebody unless you understand what's going on. And there are tons of places to get resources, my book included, but the Menopause Society websites. There's a couple of certifications that are pretty good. I think, Shawna, you've done the
Yeah.
MedFit one. There's a
Yeah.
Girls Gone Strong one, and it just explains at least, so even young guys who are trainers, because that's the meat and bones of our industry, right? They're doing these certifications and they can then approach their clients and say, oh, guess what? I'm certified in menopause. You can have a conversation with me about it, or I can help you out if you need it. And I think that opens the door to open communication,
Yeah.
because I've had clients that have come to me and went, I'm exhausted, like I can't do it today. I literally have nothing to give, but I turned up just because I paid you, essentially. And so, like, how do you handle a client in that situation, like whose joints maybe are sore, who's got chronic fatigue? And well, first of all, one, it's a win that they showed up, right? So you've got to sort of emphasize that you did the biggest hurdle, and that was, showing up today. And then realize that every day might look different for them. One day they might feel like that, but then the next day they might be running on, 10, and they should carpe the diem out of their workout. But like on those days where they're really struggling symptomatically, whether it's physical or, mental health or emotional, just meet your client where they're at. So I would do things like, you know what, today, if you're not feeling great, why don't we work on your biomechanics? Why don't we do some mobility work? We all know how important these are. Like, why don't we go for a walk together? We'll work on, well, I'll tell you the importance of NEAT, like just actually moving every day. Um, and I think that if you can encourage your clients to look for small wins, it doesn't matter what it looks like. You're gonna build up a really healthy relationship through, especially the more symptomatic times of menopause.
I think we talk to other coaches and obviously just, general population. I think it's just really important for the women to hear that, number one, everyone's menopause experience is their own. And comparison is the killer of joy. While someone might be looking like they're sailing through it, someone else might be struggling, but the tables could turn at any point, like yourself, as being an educated, very fit person. When you entered perimenopause and you're like, what in the tarnation is going on, that can happen to anyone. And I think that knowing that we're not alone is really important. But turning it around, that's kind of the dark side of menopause, that, hey, I'm of the mind that it's not all doom and gloom. And there are so many things. And I want to be offering hope. And I think your book does this as well, in terms of there's so many things from a lifestyle and habit perspective that we can do to help ourselves. So, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I want to just comment on the two things. Yes, talking to other people about it is so key, because it's a very isolating time for a lot of women. Speak to your partner or your friends, or go on a community group. Like, it really makes a difference. Secondly, I love that you said, what incarnation. I don't think I've ever said that in my life before. That sounds so Canadian.
I don't know if it's Canadian. It just came out.
I
Anyway.
love it. I love it. I love it. But the positives, oh my goodness. So here's the thing, like, I think when someone is really struggling, it's really difficult to be like, oh yeah, menopause is all, wine and roses, and I'm going to run through a field in a floaty dress. And it really can be almost a bit of like toxic positivity, right? And it's really important that we have a real conversation. So you're going to have 75% of women that are going to have an average of 7 symptoms. 25% will have, severe enough symptoms where they probably need treatment. So we know the numbers on that. And symptoms come and go. And, some symptoms can be horrible, some are manageable. You only need one symptom that's really shitty, right, to ruin your life. Like mine was migraines. That's what they were, by the way. But so when I was in the thick of it personally, I was like, I don't want to hear about this getting better. I just want to know what's wrong with me, because it hurts, right? And you're feeling vulnerable and all of those things. But what's really important to know for women is it's called the menopause transition for a reason. Our body is going through a reproductive change. It changes us physically, it changes our brain size, shape, and structure. And all of those things, typically for almost all women, rebound in postmenopause in that 3 to 5 year window. And so I like to say it's like, um, it's a tunnel, not a cave. There sort of is a light at the end of the tunnel. And from a lifestyle perspective, regardless of whether you take hormone therapy or any pharmaceuticals or not, they're the things that you've ultimately got within your grasp. And they can look different for everyone. But, jumping into moving more and balancing out your diet, reducing alcohol as much as humanly possible, and stress, and improving your sleep, and then not smoking are the tenets of health that are proven and they're accessible, and it doesn't matter what they look like to you. But one of the things I like to tell women, and Shawna, you're great for this because I watch you and we're friends and I follow you, is I think that women, as they get older, and not specifically through menopause, but menopause sort of like adds another hurdle, stop feeling capable, stop feeling as though they can do as much as they used to do. And I know they can. Like, and they can, ladies, right? And so I think one of the analogies I used to use is, I saw you coming out of Walmart with 20 bags of shopping. I know you can carry a lot. It's just stop reaching for the 3 pound weights. Like, you actually can do more. So we need to build up that belief system in women that shows them that they can and they should still challenge themselves and still push themselves. It's so important for our overall growth.
Yeah, and talk to us, Amanda, about the emotional stuff maybe a little bit. One of the things that I've just, because of Shawna and just looking more into menopause and perimenopause, that has been interesting to me is reading studies that have been done on the emotional or mental side in particular, as far as how menopause and perimenopause can affect women as far as their marriages, their relationships, and divorce rates. Like, have you experienced, or either of you experienced things that may be something that women maybe just don't realize? Hey, I'm going through this and I'm experiencing this, but I would have never related it to my hormones or this transition in life.
Yeah, so what was really interesting to me when I started having this conversation and researching it is how estrogen really is the main player in the disruption of our system, and we really feel the symptoms because of the falling and declining estrogen mainly. But estrogen is on around 200 systems in our body, estrogen receptors. And so if we know that they impact almost all of the systems in our body, when we start to feel these different symptoms, whether it's hot flashes, depression, anxiety, not sleeping well, gut problems, heart palpitations, all of these things, it makes sense when you understand how important estrogen is. And I think we underestimate the emotional side of that. And so, like the physiological side, especially in my community, when you hear them talking, things like I don't recognize myself when I look in the mirror. I don't remember what I used to be like. I remember waking up and thinking, I can't carry on waking up feeling as shitty as I do, dreading the day, not wanting to see my kids, not liking my husband at all, and then avoiding all of my friends because it just was so overwhelming. And that's sort of something typically I hear from a lot of women. And so one of the things I realized was that the only way you can sort of overcome those type of things is by talking and sharing. Like, I just don't think there's any other way to move on from it. And so the minute I told one other person and they were like, oh yeah, I feel the same too, it was like, oh really, it's not just me. And it was just a bit of a light bulb. And so I just did a TEDx talk, and it's called Should Men Talk About Menopause? And I did it because during my experience with my husband, I had 2 years where I didn't know if I wanted to be married to him. I didn't understand why. I'd sit down and go, financially, we're okay. Everybody's healthy. We own a home. We have good jobs. And maybe I just don't like him anymore. It's like that type of thing. And it was just really worrying for me. And I couldn't work out why I didn't like him anymore and why everything that I used to like about him irritated me more than ever. And it was actually only when I really sat down and reflected, I was like, no, I actually really still do admire all those things about him. So what's happened? And when I found out I was in perimenopause and the doctor said, I can help you, and I started like treatment, I sort of said to him, I've got depression and migraines and I'm in perimenopause. And he said, "Thank God for that. I thought you were going to leave me." And I just was heartbroken. And I just was like, okay, this has been our menopause experience and the kids and my friends. And so I just vowed right then to be completely open about everything. I don't care how uncomfortable it makes me. I just think that talking about everything with somebody, whether that's therapist professionally or whether that's just in a community group, can actually probably answer a lot of the questions. And for me, it saved my marriage. I know the divorce rates are so much higher during perimenopause. I don't know that that's always the reason, but I know that it's got to account for something. Women leave work because of that. 1 in 10 women leave work because of unmanaged symptoms, and 1 in 5 think about it. Right. So there's definitely enough changes that emotionally it impacts us, and we can't ignore that.
I think the big thing that's going to help going forward is the fact that we are talking about it more. It is, it's becoming more common knowledge. Women are becoming more aware of it. Um, but with that, and I know that this is, a little thorn in both our sides, all our sides, is that menopause is really the next cash cow because the marketers are like all over menopause. So, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it? We've got to the point where nobody spoke about it after the WHI study of 2002. All of these women got taken off it. I mean, the experts sort of said probably at the time more women were on it than should have been. But what's happened is it's never caught up. It's never caught up, and there's not enough access for the women that want it. And then in between, there was this like chasm of like nothingness where all of
Yeah.
the snake oil salesmen were able to go, well, I've got a solution for you. And whether that's private clinics issuing unregulated treatments, which is an insane cash cow, things like compounded estrogen or testosterone pellets. That's a big thing in the south of America, not South America, but like in
Yeah.
Texas and all of those areas. And then the supplement industry is worth billions of dollars. Like this, the menopause industry is worth $16.1 billion, and the majority of that is on supplements. And on average, they think that women spend about $2,000 a year on unproven treatments. And I don't know about you ladies, but like I got an email today from a company called Vavavoom, right? I opened it up and it's like, would you be interested in promoting this product for menopausal women? And it's a herbal supplement. And when I looked at it, there was a well-known doctor actually promoting it and endorsing the ingredients. And I know these ingredients aren't proven. I know they're not. Like I've done research and I would never endorse anything like that anywhere. But I know how this works behind the scenes. And so do you ladies. They approach us, they give us some money. We do a few Instagram, social media posts going, my life's turned around and it's changed since I started using these supplements. And it's just wrong. And I think that we see it really clearly because we're in the thick of it. But a lot of women who are getting ignored by their doctor, who probably doesn't have the education, Dr. Ardell Piper probably spoke about that. And then, well, I'm desperate, and they're usually vulnerable. And so they'll want to do something like supplement because they'll think it will help them. And chances are it won't.
Women are willing to try anything. And so it just angers me to no end.
Yeah, and it sort of gets a little bit worse than that as well. Like, because, yeah, we don't want to be taken advantage of. But then there's also the false claims. There's like a couple of companies out there that'll say, take this medication, it'll get rid of all of your weight, it'll fix your metabolism.
Yeah.
And it's, that's nonsense. And, you can report them to places like the FTC. But that process takes ages. They've got thousands and thousands of requests, and these companies just carry on happily doing it. And at worst, it costs women a lot of money. But even more than that, some of these products can have cross contamination. Just because it's a supplement and it's natural, like inverted commas, it doesn't mean that it's safe.
Yeah.
There's contraindications to other medications. And, like, for example, black cohosh, if taken in excess, can have problems with your liver, right? So, yeah, these things aren't benign either. And
And
so, yeah, Shawna, you nailed it. It's a cash cow. They call it meno washing. They stick menopause on a face cream now, and then all of a sudden they can add an extra $10 on because we have a
yeah.
tiny bit more money, probably, right?
Well, and it actually prevents women from seeking the help that is actually, or doing the things that are going to help, like resistance training, looking at your diet, like rather than buying this magic bean, increase fiber, do jumping jacks for bone density. And so it really does prevent the actions that are required. That will, so there's some health other than contraindications. There's health implications because as our estrogen declines, so does our muscle, so does our bone, our cardiovascular risk bumps up. So we're really preventing the actions we need to help with to that end as well.
What's really interesting about that genre is it's Heart Health Month at the moment, and we know we're all talking about it. And currently, menopause hormone therapy isn't indicated to be cardio preventative, right? So you can't go to your doctor and go, I'm worried about my heart health. I want to go on hormone therapy because it's not indicated for that. We know that estrogen is cardioprotective. It's part of your heart health. And in those women who are going through premature menopause, like under the age of 40, and even early menopause under the age of 45, it might be indicated to be protective until the age of menopause. Um, and it's been incorrectly upsold to women. But when we know how good hormone therapy is for symptom management, I just think it's really unfair to do that to women. And then what frustrates me about that is that a lot of women will be given hormone therapy, but then they don't get the rest of the information that they need. As in, you've just said, they stick a hormone therapy patch on, but are you then doing your resistance training? You still need to do all of that. You still need to walk and eat well. And in fact, I was on a podcast the other day with this Scottish woman who is hilarious and probably X-rated, but she was in Scotland and she said, "Oh, there's all these mothers jumping in their wheelie bins full of cold water with a glass of wine in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and then they have fish and chips afterwards." And it sort of gave me this image, and I just thought, oh my goodness, that's sort of exactly the cliche that we're talking about. So when we look at the conversation about menopause, we need to have an idea that medicine can help you, whether that's hormone therapy or non-hormone therapy. That's an option if you need it. But in addition to that, you have to look at the tenets of health because we know that they're important and we know that they work. It can't be either or, right? Well, it can be either or, but I mean, you're going to get your best bang for your buck if you look at yourself. I was going to say holistically, but I think we've ruined that word. Our industry's ruined the holistic word, but you know what I mean.
Well, and also that, hormone therapy is not the panacea because it doesn't work for all, because your experience was such that, hey, it's not for you. And so I think that that is also important, that every woman's journey is a little bit different and every woman needs to find out answers for themselves in addition to the basics being the exercise, less stress, more sleep, better food, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's clear contraindications for some women too. I don't care what some social media influencers and doctors are saying. The menopause societies, the oncology organizations and societies are all saying there's contraindications if you've had direct cancer, you're a cancer thriver, I should say. And you have to find out what's best for you. Some women choose never to take it because they don't need it, and that shouldn't be that shouldn't be sort of radical. But I see it in social media posts like, "You're not going on hormone therapy. What about the long-term benefits?" And I'm just like, you don't. There's no other medication I know where you would go on it preventatively just in case, when we know, like, for example, cardiovascular disease is 80% preventable through lifestyle choices, right? So I just think that, like, there's been a little bit of a skewed conversation happening. And yeah, and then there's people like me who are hormone sensitive, where I wanted to try it because my symptoms were so bad, but they made my symptoms way worse than they ever were. So, not everyone can take it successfully either.
Amanda, I want to know about this book that you've written and the title of it. So tell us about yeah, yes, Shawna's got it right there. The Menopocalypse. So tell us about the title and how you came up with this, and tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, well, you know how, like, I think all of us think we've got a book in us, don't we? We're like, let's all write a book, and mine was going to be on travel because you nailed it, Shauna. I travel a lot, and I always have for the longest time. I love culture. I love different food, cuisine, people. It's really important part of my life. And instead, I write a menopause book. And I told you sort of why I wrote it, because I just felt like there was this knowledge gap that needed to be filled. And that to me is the best way to make changes, to give people knowledge, and then it promotes agency, they can advocate for themselves. Um, so I wrote the book, and I wrote it before the pandemic, and I couldn't get anybody to buy it. And I essentially just thought, oh, you know what, I've written a book, and I'll just stick it on the shelf. It doesn't matter. And then this independent book publisher from Vancouver got it and said, you know what, we'd like to speak to you, Amanda, and see if we think this is a goal. And I was like, I could sell coal to Newcastle, get me on a video with them. So I did. And at the end of it, the CEO was like, we have to do this book. It's really important. And it was definitely at the wave of when menopause was just sort of having a little bit of a movement. So my timing was quite well. I ended up doing the book tour all virtually because of COVID, which was actually quite nice for me, because it gets exhausting, that type of, like, being in front of people all of the time, right? But what's happened is it's ended up being sort of like a nice evergreen book, because nothing really changes in it. This is what menopause is. This is how you speak to your doctor. These are some of the changes you'll feel in your body. And then this is like things you can do yourself. This is like the lifestyle stuff you can do. It's been an Amazon bestseller, which is really great for me. Financially, that's not as exciting as it sounds, but it's better than nothing. And I just honestly wanted to write your best mate's guide to menopause. That's what I wanted. And I wanted to call it Menopocalypse. And then I was like, oh, that sounds so bad. And I'm not, it sounds negative, and I'm a positive person. But then I thought, it did feel bad, and there's nothing wrong with saying it like it was trappy. But then the subtitle is How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. And so the idea is that we can go through challenging times, but there's definitely a lot that's in our control.
Amanda, if you had a wish for our listeners, other than reading your book, which is tremendous, by the way, what would it be for our listeners today?
Oh, there's so much. And I could stick on the menopause train that we're on at the moment, but honestly, I would love every woman to my wish would be for everyone to experience what it's like to do some strength training. And and I know you're going to love the answer, but one of the reasons is because a lot of the women never consider it. They think they never start it. It feels intimidating, but we know that there's an entry point for every single person. And then I want to speak to them on day one, and then come back to them on day 90 and go, you feel any different? And physically, for sure, they're going to feel different. But like, I see their energy change. I feel their personality, like their chest pumps out. You feel capable again. And it's such a gift. Don't you think? It's one of those amazing feelings.
I would have to agree. It is so empowering to experience, the thrill of just doing something new, lifting something heavier. And it goes to all aspects of your life. If you can pick this up, oh, I can go talk to my boss. It's amazing, the transfer. So
Yeah.
my wish today is that women just become a little bit more informed about their own health, whether that is menopause related, whether that is meaning, hey, I got to learn more about strength training, or, in every avenue.
And my wish would be that women realize that we're not alone and that we get the help we need, even if we have to go to this person and that person, but just hang in there. We got this.
Thanks for listening. You'll find me, Alli, on Instagram at Alli Kerr Fitness. And you'll find me, Shawna, on Instagram at Shawna Kaminski. Feel free to pop us a DM with questions and or feedback. If you're enjoying the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, please subscribe and share it with other health-minded women. Ratings and reviews are also much appreciated and help us get our message out to a larger audience.
Until next time, be healthy and be happy.